do that. Thank you for those reflections. I'm going to bring back the screen share and talk about where this sits within the VCAP. Okay, so I am going to advance. So today's meeting, we are really focused on all of the really great work that is already happening in our state, and also the promise of having some new data and parent leadership, and the power that the importance in that work. So this work is really grounded in Goal 2 of the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan. Goal 2 is families and communities play a leading role in children's well-being. Now in the original VCAP, this was very focused on family engagement, and we recognize that family engagement is a very important piece of this. However, strong communities and strong families are the other, pieces to improving child outcomes. And so I'll just read to you this description that we have in the VCAP, as well as in How Vermont's Home Children and Families report, that families and communities need to be strong, resilient, and have the capacity to identify and meet the needs of children. A priority within this goal is to advance policies and practices that honor and are supportive of each family's culture, strengths, structure, expertise, and preferences. Building a system that listens to the needs of families and creates space at the table to make decisions together are core to success. To achieve this, Vermont will create safe and stable home environments, economic stability, family-friendly workplace policies, parent and family leadership, and communities with social and physical infrastructure to nurture resilient children and families. Where are a few examples of where you see yourself in this goal or in that description before I move on?
I think the idea of building a system that listens to the needs of families and creates space at the table are core to success. And I feel like my work at UVM Children's Hospital and at the Department of Health sort of feed into that. So it's really great. Thank you.
Thanks. Others, just a few examples, or you can add in the chat bar where you see yourself within this goal or that language that we used.
I think, for me and for my organization, the whole idea of families knowing what they need and what their children need and knowing their children best and being able to elevate their voices in a way that makes them feel like equal partners at the table, and promoting that kind of family community relationship and partnership across the board is really significant and can make the system so much better in the long run, because if it's informed by family perspective, it's going to be much more responsive and probably make way more sense in the long run. I think setting the table for those types of mutually beneficial interactions is something that as a system we've been striving for and struggling with for a long time, but I'm very hopeful that this time we will make some concrete steps in that direction. Thanks.
Thanks, Pam. And I'm seeing some comments about, there was some very, it took a while, but very intentional development and maybe evolution from the original goal language that was very provider centric to hopefully being more family and child centric. And you'll actually see that. So I would love to, if there's others who want to share, but here is this framework that we've been using. When we talk about Goal 2, families and communities play a leading role in children's well-being, we're talking about impacting, of course, the child, but involving the family and the community level. As you can see, there's arrows to those second and third levels. So the family, we're talking about kind of the child's connection to others, to their caregivers. It could be a teacher, it could be parents, grandparents kind of thing, and to the community. So what are those services and resources that that family accesses? Any other reflections on where you see yourself in some of this language before I move to indicators? We will have more opportunity. And I know that everyone on this call is connected, right, to our family engagement work in one way or another, which is really promising. So I just want to give a quick tour of the outcome areas for this goal, again, just to frame our conversation around family engagement. So we've really, when you take a deeper look at the VCAP, you'll see that this goal has 3 main sections. One is strong families outcomes, and those we are, I had to divide this into two slides because there's so many, which is a good sign. So intermediate indicators, we're talking about access to paid family leave. We're talking about % of children with a trusted adult in their lives, the use of the Strengthening Families framework, which has, I feel like we're really working to integrate into all of the work that we're doing. And then for 5-year indicators under strong families, we're talking about children who are flourishing, % of adults who are receiving social and emotional support, and increase or decrease of DCF involvement. The second outcome.
Can I just interrupt for just 1 second about those bi-directional indicators? You know, I think it's not necessarily that we don't know. It's a complicated variable, right? Because we don't want people to not be reporting. We want children to be safe, but we also want families to be able to care for their children, right? So we don't know exactly the way that we measure this indicator is not necessarily exact. It's a proxy measure for family well-being and stability.
Thank you, Dora. I appreciate you jumping in. This is just one of those measures that I mentioned. So % of children aged 6 months to 5 years who are flourishing or meeting all 4 criteria for flourishing. The target value was 80% and the value, at least at this point, was 68%. So just one example. The second outcome area is strong communities. So again, when we're talking about intermediate indicators, are access to community-based infrastructure, such as libraries or parks, access to out-of-school time care and summer meals. There could be many more, but those are just 2 examples. And then 5-year indicators are population growth in the state. We talk a lot about trying to attract families to the state. We talk about population growth of non-white children, the diversity of our state, representation in government, such as the % of Vermont legislators who are women or identify as BIPOC, representation in educators and caregivers. So those are some areas that we are, again, trying to quantify, which this is really challenging one to identify outcome areas that we can actually measure, but those were some that we identified, at least at this point. And this is a slide of our current demographics of children ages 0 to 8. And then the last outcome area we talk about is family partnership, leadership, and decision-making. And not a surprise, I think, to many people on this call, is that measuring success and progress around family partnership, leadership, and decision-making is actually really hard and has been a data gap in our state, and is something that we're working on, which is brings us to kind of the next part of our agenda. So I am just going to transition us to talk about family partnership and engagement. We have a panel of 3 folks, and I will stop the screen share so we can all say hi. We have Emily Merrill, who's been serving as the parent representative to the State Advisory Council and leading the Family Engagement Assessment Project, which has been quite the endeavor. Jen Fort, who came on board with BBF as a parent ambassador for that project and has since stepped into the role as co-chair of the Families and Communities Committee, which is the VCAP committee that ushers Goal 2. And Charlotte Safran, who has 2 roles, and she'll introduce herself, coordinator of patient and family-centered care program at UVMMC Children's Hospital and family partnerships consultant with Vermont Department of Health. So I'm going to stop the screen share so we can say hi. And just check in with those 3 panelists to see if we wanted to present the family engagement stuff first and then move into the panel. Did you have preferences on our process there? Emily or Jen, did you prefer to do that presentation first?
And what do you think? I'm happy to follow your lead. I think it's great to just offer, the basic information. I'm not sure how many folks in this meeting have been introduced to, the data that we did collect and how we did that. What do you think, Jen?
I agree. A little overview is probably good.
All right, we got some thumbs up from Charlotte, so.
All right, so I'm going to go back to the screen share and turn it back over to you guys. Just tell me when you want to advance the.
Okay, all right. So Jen and I met yesterday, but and she did such an incredible job of presenting to the Families and Communities Committee evening session, which was one of 2 sessions. So Jen, would you like to go ahead and present the data on the next few slides, and I'll lead us off? Does that sound okay for you? All right. So my type of leadership is actually really collaborative, and so thanks for your patience with that. I'm excited to introduce the data that we collected with the Family Engagement Assessment, and to have served as the parent and project manager. But so many people in this room know that this was a collaborative effort that was born over years of conversation and wondering and sort of aspirational thinking around how can we move forward the conversation that elevates and highlights, family engagement, whatever that term, is defined as by, every organization in the early childhood system. So under the VCAP goal number 2, the Families and Communities Committee came up with this idea. So the concept was a collective effort, and I sort of took the ball and ran with it as project manager, having served as the Families and Communities Committee co-chair and the parent rep on the State Advisory Council. I was really grateful for the opportunity, and it's an interesting approach, right, to take a parent and put that parent in a position of leadership moving forward. So that's kind of how that process started a year ago, and so basically this was the assessment tool that was developed in collaboration with CSSP, the Center for Study of Social Policy. So we had some technical assistance available from Malia Franklin, who called into meetings to coordinate both the effort to hire parent ambassadors across the state, and develop a training program and kind of a system of support that really gelled the group and trained the group to kind of speak in meetings, to understand what the early childhood system is, to feel empowered and capable in their role, and also to collect this data using this assessment tool. So the process was as important as the actual data collection product. So the first question in this assessment was asking families, first of all, do you have a child who's age 6 and under? and you live in Vermont. Those were the qualifiers. If the answer was yes, go ahead and move forward. The second question was asking the family to really think about what their point of contact in the early childhood system would be. And so we're dealing with a decentralized system, right? We can't prescribe to a family what they need to reflect on in order to answer the rest of the questions. That was really kind of a moment of self-reflection for the family. And we had a wide variety of options selected by families. So it might have been a mental health support person, a home visitor, a medical home, early childcare setting. The distribution was fairly, even. And then moving through these questions, this was a Likert scale, 1 to 6, strongly disagree, strongly agree, or sorry, 1 to 5. And so these 5 questions were asked. I feel that my children and I are treated with kindness and feel comfortable and welcomed. I feel like my providers understand and welcome my family's culture and values. I feel that I'm given the opportunity to make decisions about how to best care for my children and family. I feel it is easy to communicate my needs to staff at the program. And for families who had transitioned from pre-K to kindergarten, so that wasn't everybody who completed this survey, this is asking, for reflection on that process. And I should also qualify that this is, these questions were really modeled after CSSP's very specific parent engagement assessment. So these weren't just kind of out of nowhere questions, but the goal was to really attend to how families feel. So we're not talking about whether they were engaged with their service provider. We're talking about how families perceived that experience. The kindergarten transition question is really important for our system and our state. So that was a little bit aside from CSSP's work. And then I did go ahead and add some questions about race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic level at the end. What am I missing, Jen or Beth? What am I not telling you that's important to move forward to the next slide?
I think what I would add is the survey was taken by a group of parent ambassadors. So me as a parent, I guess at the beginning before the pandemic hit, I was going and having pretty intimate conversations with other parents. And it really made parents feel, I would say, more comfortable. And it was a more intimate setting as opposed to getting influenced by an organization or an establishment.
Right, exactly. Thank you so much, Jen. This is a peer survey model. So we're looking at, very different information than might be collected in a sort of satisfaction or self-assessment survey. Beth, were you going to add?
The same thing. So yeah, just the process of the parent ambassadors and the training and the support, it was a very time intensive, but totally worth it process.
Absolutely. I think that was really the root of what gelled the group. And the end result was that we had parent ambassadors who continued beyond the survey work to participate in our committees. We have 2 parent ambassadors in positions of leadership right now with BBF. One is our regional council co-chair, and then Jen is the Families and Communities Committee co-chair. So we weren't just collecting information, we were training up family leadership roles, and kind of distributing and allocating those resources to, the early childhood system, which was just really incredible to see that kind of drive. It's important to mention that our parent ambassadors are paid. That much of my role was kind of texting, preparing, training, hand-holding, but in a really nice collaborative way, not in a kind of a I don't want that to be perceived as sort of I'm the parent, but it was very much like we are in this together. You have an ally in this work, and I have been there as a parent leader, and it's not easy. And you know, that kind of experience for our group really held us together, and we saw that in the participation, especially in the Families and Communities Committee over time, that, you know, families continue to engage. We do have over 50% parent and family participation in every committee meeting. So I missed what Renee just threw in the chat. Right, the process as important as the outcome. Thanks, Renee. All right, I think I'm ready to move forward, but are there any questions or thoughts? I can't see people, so okay. All right, Jen, why don't I tag you on this and we can just collaborate moving forward. All right.
All right. So in one of the questions asking whether the respondent feels the family is treated with kindness at the location or the service of their choice. Overall, 76% of families in Vermont felt that they were treated with kindness. Yet only 50% of Black or African-American families strongly agreed. 55% of families who identified as more than one race. 63% of families who receive 3 squares food assistance. So those who live at or below the 185% of the poverty line. 83% strongly agreed when they're in their childcare setting, and 75% agreed in their medical home setting. So one family replied, blank is the third parent of our children, and we couldn't be happier with her involvement in our development. And some things others have said, I think they have too many kids and don't really have enough attention for each kid. Some turnover in staff there lately has been a struggle. And so these were some optional comments that families included. And so in the survey, when it went from strongly disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree, there was a space for optional comment. And that's where families really shared their stories. And kind of giving out the survey, that was our job as parent ambassadors, was to encourage families to share those stories. And that's where some of these quotes come from. I'm ready for the next slide if Emily doesn't want to jump in. Great.
Sorry, I'm just typing a response to Pam in the chat. But just to echo, you know, we wanted to collect both quantitative and qualitative data, and that's sort of a massive task when you're thinking about serving families who are actively engaging in some sort of play group, or they're at the library, or wherever that kind of delivery happened from the parent ambassador to the parent or caregiver. And so this optional comment was kind of the opt-in or out to sharing your story. And there is a lot of kind of energy and interest in collecting families' stories as they pertain to these questions.
Great, thank you. So the partnering and decision-making, in the question, I am giving the opportunity to make decisions. Overall, 62% said that they strongly agree. Only 29% of Black or African-American families strongly agreed. 36% of more than one race. 52% who participate in 3 Squares Vermont, 62 who chose a childcare setting, and 69% who of those who chose medical home setting. And so one family said they were open to and non-judgmental about our decision about baby sleep and solids. And another is there is one lead teacher that I dislike because it seems like she tries to overrule parental decisions and alert her own value system. And so as you can see, there's really positive and both negative experiences that we received. And just to jump into kind of this past year, the survey collecting looked a little different. First, we started out collecting surveys in person. And then the pandemic hit and everything went remote. And the stay-at-home order changed how we were collecting the surveys. And that really limited the number of parents who had access to technology and internet. And just a stat is the overall number of surveys that were generated is 423 responses. And out of those 423, 342 were collected from June to July, all remote.
Jen, can I ask a quick question? This is Danielle.
Sure.
How many of that distribution, first of all, that's an awesome sample. How many of that distribution were from childcares versus the medical home? And were there other service providers that were included within that sample, or were those the two identified service providers?
Jen, can I jump in?
Sure.
Okay. So what I didn't include is the distribution pie chart. So I can read that out to you, and Dora can also, of course, jump in as our data manager. So the distribution was, again, it was sort of by choice, and it was fairly even. We had 19% choose a community-based setting, 11% choose a school-based setting, 7% chose other, 3% chose Head Start, and I should say other included CIS, early intervention and home visiting. 36% chose childcare, 23% chose medical practice. So again, we didn't ask people any qualifiers around the location that they chose.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. It just was, with that unique sample size, how broad was it representing for different service areas? Again, thinking back to the framing premise of today, which is that broad vision of an integrated, holistic system supporting families. So that's super. I appreciate that information.
Right, and how telling is that about what families know and understand about our early childhood system? The other question that I saw pop up is distribution based on race or ethnicity. Did someone toss that into the chat? That will be included in the report, and I see Beth is screen sharing the report.
Yes, I just happen to have the report that we are desperately trying to finish up on my screen. So I'm gonna try and pull that up. Here we go.
So what we found is, this is the pie chart distribution of responses. There was a specific effort to hire parent ambassadors who represented the communities across Vermont that we really wanted to access information from. And so when we look at this, the chat is right in my way. When we look at this pie chart, it is shockingly dominantly, white, with 86% of families self-identifying as white, 4% Asian, 4% Black or African American, 3% as more than one race, and 3% as other. What we did was compare this with census data, and what we learned is that this sample size is actually representative of slightly more of our BIPOC communities than would be expected based on the population distribution in Vermont. So we did fairly well identifying and accessing the communities we wanted to reach.
It's just interesting because it's also reflective of the disparity that, we're all hearing about right now about how people feel in Vermont, if they are persons of color or Indigenous peoples or the other categories that fall under BIPOC. So I was really curious about that, but it's a great effort on your part. I really want to applaud the work that you guys have done. I just think it's important that we keep this in front of us as we're looking about all children and all families, and really thinking about what some of the barriers to those access and inclusion areas may be. So thanks for that.
Absolutely. And Pam, you've always had such an important role in elevating that perspective in our meetings, you know, throughout the past few years. And I have appreciated that. Thank you.
I'm just going to bring the screen share back up and I can advance it if you guys are ready.
Do folks have some thoughts about partnering and decision making? I mean, just from my own experience as a parent leader, this is a question close to my heart, and I wonder if that's the same for others in this group. And you know, similar to what Beth asked, where do you see yourself in this question or these answers? But let's put that in the parking lot. But this, you know, I specifically would love to touch on this more. All right, next slide. Thanks.
Oh, all right, and so this was the question regarding transition from pre or early childhood care to kindergarten. And so there were less responses, as Emily had mentioned earlier in this, this particular question. So overall, 52% of those responded felt that they strongly agreed that they felt supported in their child's transition. 40% of those who identify as Black or African American, 33% of more than one race, 55% of those who participate in food, Three Squares, and 60% of those who chose a child care setting, and 44% in a medical home setting. So this is was pretty alarming for me to see this just as a parent with young children in the early childcare, not yet transitioned into kindergarten, to just see how many parents are not feeling supported in their child's transition. And these are very important years of their lives for both the children and the family and everybody involved. And it's just alarming, but this information and this data that we are looking at is just like the baseline of the work that everybody is doing in the early childhood system. And without this data, it really, I mean, people are just speculating. So having this data, you really have real stories and real emotions from the families of how people truly feel. And with this information now, we can use this to move forward in a way that will hopefully change this data in the future.
Jen, this to me is one of the most important data points that you all collected for that exact reason, right? It really captures the family's perspective on how we are supporting their needs through critical periods of transition. So I love your framing of this. And, you know, it's something that we can continue to talk more about as, you know, as this group, but really thinking, you know, if families are really not feeling supported, what are the different ways that we as a broader early childhood system need to wrap around them and need to be focused on supporting their needs, their transitions, even if we think we're doing an incredible job in specific areas, right? It really is about capturing the family voice and the family perspective on how we're doing as a system.
Morgan, can I follow up on that? I just want to toss out to this group. Transition to kindergarten is like one of the bread and butters of Head Start programs, and it's an explicit priority at all levels, including at the Collab office. So I'm with you. I also get really excited when I see this data point because anecdotally what we hear is, oh no, families are supported and everyone's doing great. And this really illuminates, not so much. We still have a lot of work to do. But I just want to offer, because it is a Head Start priority and a Collab priority, there are opportunities to leverage additional resources in this work. So nationally, Head Start did a kindergarten transition pilot. I've got, you know, a 4-inch thick binder sitting on my desk about strategies and how to hold kindergarten transition summits. You know, I've talked about this with Head Start communities, thinking about it on a local level, but I would really love to make a push towards doing it more at a state level, given now that we have this data. So I'm right there with you. This is exciting to me. And just, hey, there's money and resources available, wink, wink, if we are really serious and want to put together a plan for how we might approach this work in the future.
Yeah, this is Linda. This data around kindergarten transition is not surprising to me at all. You know, we typically send our kindergarteners off to at least 6 different schools, and some of them being in the same district, and the transition looking vastly different for every school. And also connecting with families after they've transitioned, feeling like it is such a shock to the system that it's so vastly different from the environment and expectations of a really child-centered, family-centered program. That, yeah, this data is not surprising at all.
I also just want to follow up on what you were saying, Renee. I think that like I would suspect that this is definitely in the back of your head, but just to say explicitly that to use that 4-inch binder, but have the choices of, you know, which of those policies is put forward and which feel meaningful, led by families and parents and caregivers rather than the people who are in the systems work.
I really appreciate folks' reflections, and as we are really on the final stretch in writing the report, so all this data will be available to you soon, like as of yesterday. I wish it was out, but trying to get that done and get that out so it can be useful. A reflection that I have is to hear the energy around transitions, and that's a point that actually I think we could incorporate a little bit more in a stronger way into the report. So thank you. This talking it through is helpful in that process. And also the other piece is that we recognize that having common language and definitions is really needed in this area. And so that's some work that Charlotte in particular has been trying to rally us around. And Charlotte, I wonder if you want to just jump in kind of as we transition out of looking at the data to thinking about opportunities for some common language, or kind of what are the definitions that you use as we talk about family engagement. We really want people to be more engaged and have a more unified plan across the state.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly really more than happy to jump in a little bit. I want to I think it's valuable and important for me to begin with giving a teeny tiny bit of background around how I got into this work. I am a mom of 3, and my education is actually, I have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education. So my understanding and commitment to the importance of early childhood work is huge. I have 3 children, and my son Lincoln, who's now 13, is a pretty medically complex little guy. And you know, I had been working sort of in the nonprofit, like family services early childhood field. And then about 5 years ago, when UVM Medical Center shifted to make a commitment to really creating and promoting a patient and family-centered care culture, my background in sort of early childhood and family systems, and then my personal medical journey with Lincoln kind of brought me into that role. So I by no means, I'm always learning is what I wanted to say. I'm always learning. And I also want to say that, my time at UVM Children's Hospital, it's a half-time position. There's so much work to do. We've made some good inroads. And then, through my work from UVM Children's Hospital, folks at the Division of Maternal and Child Health, specifically children with special health needs, saw, maybe an opportunity to also really make the family partnerships work within that program a bit more strong. So I just wanted to give folks a background in that, so that people don't think so people understand that I have a vested interest in this. I also want to say that there are many professionals, obviously all of you, who have been active in the family engagement, family partnerships work, and this committee specifically much longer than I have. I again don't want to come in.
Uh-oh, Charlotte, we lost your feed. Maybe you want to turn off your video and we'll be able to get you back. Also seeing the really rich chat going on around transition. So I don't want to lose that thread as well. So thank you for that engagement with folks who are chiming in around transitions. While we try and get Charlotte back, Jen or Emily, I wonder if there's any other reflections about kind of your reflection on this process, and before we kind of open it up for further discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of jump in where somewhere around where Charlotte left off, and it looks like she's joining us again. There became like a moment at the end of this process where enough energy was generated and awareness that things are happening. This project has increased the number of families who are participating and engaging. And I actually approached. Oops, there's a little echo. I approached Charlotte and said, "Hey, let's work together to provide a professional development opportunity for CCV. We can pull parents from different organizations across the state who are doing work with families, building leadership roles for families." And I thought it would be easy. I thought it would be easy to email so and so and so and so and ask for a recommendation of a parent who might sit on a panel. And it ended up being a really difficult task. It wasn't a succinct, system or network of family engagement or family partnership groups, as I had kind of conceptualized in my mind. So I just wanted to add that, there became an opportunity for more collaboration across the state, just in identifying what's happening, where it's happening, and who the point people are for that. Charlotte, are you back?
I'm back. I'm sorry. Do you remember how I said I had 3 kids and we're all accessing our Wi-Fi at one time?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for your patience. And I don't know where I went off, except I just wanted to come to this committee with a bunch of humility. And I'm thankful for Emily, for providing some context that I am somebody who loves to think about systems. I love to think about access. I love to think about ease of access. And I love to think about messaging. How might we harness all of the incredible work that's already happening, and through through collaboration and through common messaging and common themes and definitions, ensure that leadership across the state knows how to access these incredible families who are, willing and able to offer their perspective and wisdom. I want to, in the vein of being humble, I want to absolutely just be part of the discussion and answer any questions folks may have. The work that I've done at UVM Children's Hospital, we have over 65 what we call patient family advisors who advise work across our pediatric settings. They're very engaged, and, leadership and professionals at a part of the big push of what we've built is a space for leadership and professionals in the healthcare setting to know how to access patient family advisors and know how to partner and collaborate with patient and family advisors in ways that are meaningful to both the professional and the patient and family. But I am going to stop there and just be available for discussion and reflection and questions.
Thanks, Charlotte. We have time for maybe one or two more reflections around family engagement, with an invitation that this is something that we can surely dig into more in the future.
Beth, this is Cynthia, and I've just been sort of pondering, for lack of a better phrase, sort of thinking about family engagement more from an upstream perspective. And I wonder if there are opportunities in the future to work with our family planning folks or our OBGYN, I can't speak this morning, folks around, as individuals or as folks are thinking about developing their family, how do we build those self-advocacy skills early in family development? And I originally started a text or a chat with thinking about even high school, and this may be way down in the future, but there's a set of skills, right, that comes with being able to advocate for yourself and then advocate for your family. And I just wonder where are the opportunities to work with partners outside of the early childhood field and even family physicians about how to develop this skill set very early in the development of the family to help them help them engage in ways that open other doors, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Thanks for those thoughts, Cynthia. Certainly, we talk about a pipeline, and as a parent personally, I had no idea, right? Even as someone who was very civically engaged before kids, just not even on my radar or capacity for a long time. Right, how do you engage, and then, as we know, support family engagement, which takes a lot of thought and time. And quite a bit of this is outlined in the report. And Amy, to your question in the chat, there's a discussion guide built into the report. So definitely encourage discussion among staff. And then the Families and Communities Committee can be accessed. Emily or Jen, I don't know if you want to say kind of what capacity folks on the committee have to share this information or to talk about family engagement in the future.
Sure. First, I just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to be here as a parent leader. It's very empowering, and providing spaces for parents it's just reassuring and comforting to know that there is all of you working to have parents involved. And our goal for our Families and Communities Committee is to keep the communication lines open with other BBF committees, other establishments, and we love to have guests join, or if you have any questions or anything you would like our committee to review or our parents to look over. We are very open to receiving that information and sharing it with our committee. Our committee, like most committees, is a work in progress, and we review the work that we're doing. We really take into account the second goal of the VCAP. Sorry, I have a little helper over here. But it's so we really take into account what the second goal is, which steers what our committee is doing, and it's forever changing. So our capacity to kind of mom brain trying to multitask. We welcome anybody to come and share, or reach out to me, and I'm happy to bring anything to our committee, as well as sitting on here, this committee. Just keeping the communication lines open is very important.
Thanks, Jen.
Jen, you're an amazing super mom moment. We have those a lot with our parent ambassadors, like somebody's climbing and mom's giving a presentation, and somehow we make it work. On the website, the Families and Communities Committee has worked so hard to develop not only a membership form that talks about who we are and what we do, and what our values are, but also some inroads for consultation. So organizations are welcome to kind of bring policy to the committee and ask families to review that policy, and certainly willing to welcome folks to join as guests, and to reach out outside of meeting time to discuss next steps.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for.
Can I just jump
go ahead, Dora.
1 second. I just wanted to mention that in addition to this family engagement assessment, that in the larger needs assessment that report that has been published, there is a whole section on family engagement, and it is more from the provider systems side, but there's a lot of data in there, and there's also a section in the data gaps table. So if you are, I know this is a data centric group, and I just wanted to point that out as well, that just in addition to sort of, it's not even rounding out the picture, but it's an additional piece of the picture. That is available in the needs assessment report.
Awesome. So clearly something that we are passionate about and would love to talk more about, and will, right? I do want to transition us to share some more data that if you remember, as our committee was coming together, we asked folks to respond to a survey about our early intervention and use of Act Early materials, and we have some of that data to share. And so I'm going to hand this over to Lauren, who's going to share just a few highlights, since we only have a few minutes. But certainly, if folks are interested, we can get you more information. So,
great, thank you. And I will keep my video on for just a second, just to say hi, and it's so good to see you all. And then I am going to pop off, because I've been having similar woes as Charlotte with my internet lately. So first and foremost, I just want to give a really sincere shout out to so many of you on the call who completed this partner survey. It was not a short survey. We had a wonderful response rate in our state. And as we were reviewing the responses, it was quite evident the time and energy and how thorough those of you that completed the survey did, put the time into completing, and we really appreciate that. So As Beth mentioned, we just want to give a couple of themes that came forward and elevate a couple of key strategies and ideas moving forward. Hopefully that will be in alignment with this really rich and energizing conversation we just had about family engagement. So one thing that came across very clearly and very quickly as we were analyzing the survey results is that there was a lot of agreement among our respondents around a clear desire for alignment. Not surprising, I don't think, and I don't think any of us on this call are surprised to hear that. I think it's something that we have, as leaders in early childhood, it's been a call to action for a long time. So that came forward very clearly, and this acknowledgement that there would be increased effectiveness if better integration existed among our sectors in early childhood. There was certainly specific notes, and data that came forward from our different partner surveys that indicated, workforce capacity issues and some need for additional support around not only training workforce, but time and resources. Again, not surprising, but this real understanding that, if we had a more efficient system, that some of those barriers would be eliminated. One of the key ideas or strategies as an emerging solution for alignment was, and this of course makes my heart smile, that there was an acknowledgement of the ASQ online system that is hosted by Help Me Grow as a way to streamline and coordinate developmental screening results across the state. And that is certainly integrated with our developmental screening registry. And so it was really great to see that folks recognize that as an immediate solution, kind of a quick way that we can kind of all get on board as a way to coordinate those developmental screenings that are happening in those various settings. In the same vein as we've been talking about with family engagement, this shared vision, shared language, and shared messaging was a priority among our partner survey respondents. It's also a call out to ensuring that families are involved in that shared vision and language and messaging. And so some of the, specific to this grant around early identification, strategies and ways that we can disseminate and be modeling and coaching using the Learn the Signs Act Early materials, using the Milestone Tracker app as a way to help promote early childhood development with families. And certainly, I just want to call out and name the fact that Vermont chose the Ages and Stages questionnaire developmental screening tool very specifically because it is a parent completed tool. It's designed to have parents at the center of the conversation. And so I just want you all to feel reassured that that choice was very intentional around how we're bringing parents into the process and into that part of decision making around how they're perceiving their child's development. Another specific strategy was the Vermont Resilience Messaging Project, which for those of you who are familiar with that project know that that is an effort to disseminate a shared framework so that we have language and messaging around resiliency that is consistent across programs and specifically across, or not specifically, but in addition across leadership so that we have that collective impact. Next slide, Beth. A few of the opportunities, and I just want to say, this conversation from a quality improvement perspective, like this is so rich for some really impactful improvement efforts. And I'm so jazzed to have all of you kind of as a part of this moving forward. So just to call out some specific things from the partner survey in that same kind of spirit of addressing these opportunities that have been elevated, partners responded that, that addressing basic needs has to be first and foremost, that parents are not able to participate in conversations around child development. They're not able to follow through on referrals to early intervention if they're worried about putting food on the table, if they are unemployed and not sure when their next paycheck is coming. So we really need to, as a system, have that, to acknowledge that families, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Families need to attend to those things first. And as a system, we need to be ensuring that that is part of our efforts and our supports to families, that we're allowing and we're creating strategies that allow families to get those basic needs met. And certainly, their ability to engage in services is interrelated with what is happening in that family's context. And we saw this theme come through, so we looked at all the other really important needs assessments that have been happening in this state, and there's no lack of them, which is really helpful, as we're trying to dig into a strategic plan. But we saw this come through with the Title V needs assessment. We saw this in the McVie needs assessment for home visiting, and I'm sure it came through in others as well. There was an acknowledgement that there are regional differences in levels of care, and we know that this ultimately impacts our ability to access vulnerable populations, and it impacts equity in terms of access to care. So some of the short-term solutions for that and opportunities were certainly to have a really well-trained and well-supported workforce, to address funding inequities, to be thinking about different modalities of meeting families where they're at, and increasing equitable access to specialists. And then additionally, we heard very clearly that there's an opportunity for streamlined referral and linkage pathways. So, I think that navigation through the system and for families to know where to go when they need supports and services. Again, this is not new, but it came through very clearly as an opportunity as a part of our work together. And there was a call to, having kind of this coordinated system from, prevention all the way to receipt of services, coordinated and comprehensive system, but a real focus on the fact that when families need something, that there is a very clear pathway to get those needs met, and that we know that benefits providers as well. So Help Me Grow, the resource hub, was elevated certainly as a strategy, and we have some really great demonstration of how the resource hub has been has stepped into that role as a part of the COVID response, an acknowledgement that we've been able to connect essential workers to childcare, that we certainly can provide information to families via the resource hub services and supports, and then the ability to access mental health services, which was recognized again through some of the other needs assessments, particularly the Title V needs assessment, that the equity of mental health supports, particularly for young children, we know is in kind of a dire state, and that the Help Me Grow Resource Hub has a database to connect families, and that additionally, because of COVID, there's virtual supports that are available now across the state, so that a family who is in need of mental health supports in the Northeast Kingdom may be able to access a mental health support in another part of the state virtually, which is kind of opening doors for different ways of accessing, as well as additional ways of accessing as a result of the pandemic. Next slide. So some key next steps, and certainly this, I'm cruising through this, and we really want to dig into this further at another opportunity, at another meeting. But key next steps for family leadership and engagement, certainly the BVF Families and Communities Committee has a prominent role in the work plan for this specific grant opportunity, but we see that committee as being vital to the success and the outcomes for our children and families in the broader system as well. And to inform that early childhood system, I think parents as in leadership roles and informing policy, it's a new way of being, I think, for a lot of folks, you know, both kind of in the provider role, but as well as in the systems, roles as well. And that's a much needed and change, I think, that we can make to our system. And we see that community as a key strategy to get there. We want to develop diverse outreach strategies. So there was a lot of mention of thinking about creative and innovative ways to engage families, to you know, have different types of you know, hours for access that might meet families' needs in a better way. Certainly, we want to hear from families to know what those changes are. So we are going to be asking those questions and gathering that information as well. And certainly to address the technology and internet needs of families and caregivers so that that is not a barrier to access either. And finally, we want to customize the Learn the Signs Act Early materials, which are really high quality developmental promotion materials, including the Milestone Tracker app, so that we can disseminate those in a variety of ways and in a variety of programs and communities. We really see this as part of that communication strategy so that we are sharing consistent and high quality materials, and we're all kind of speaking the same language as we're talking about developmental promotion. And Cynthia, you are, you know, not surprisingly on it in terms of thinking about prevention. And it's one of the things that kind of came through this needs assessment as well, was that was an area of working with OBGYNs and working with prenatal support providers that we really want to dive into as part of this grant and ensure that we're sharing these materials with them as well in order to start that process early. So before babe has even arrived, we have families thinking about their child's development. And I think that's it. I made it in the just in the nick of time. Janet, if you're on and there's anything that I missed or you want to add, please feel free to jump in the last minute.
Sure. I just really thank everybody again. Can you guys hear me? I have an echo. Hold on. Okay, there. Just thank you so much for everybody's input. We have future steps that we've developed based on your input that we want to share at a future meeting, but one of those was really focusing on what Cynthia's idea of upstream prevention and more OBGYNs, and partnering with Dulce, and lots of other things we don't have time to go into, but really it was great to see how many every partner knew about Learn the Signs and was doing something to disseminate or promote the materials, use them in trainings, and it was just a really comprehensive data review, thanks to everybody taking such time to give such important feedback. So thank you all.
Thank you, Janet and Lauren, for, again, we have a lot more information and we certainly can share that with those who are interested. We have come to the end of our time, and thank you all for joining. It's great to have such engagement, both verbally and in the chat. We will return, the meeting will return to what it is our regular time, the fourth Thursday of the month, and we'll focus on social determinants of health. So really kind of continuing down a very similar thread. We'll dive into some of the data in what will then be the recently released How Are Vermont's Young Children and Families report, and really talk about how we can better align screenings, social determinant screenings across health and early care and education settings. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a good new year.
And just a quick reminder, folks, that we are doing a briefing on the 11th for the State Advisory Council for the entire field on the status of children and families using How Are Vermont's Young Children, referencing the VCAP. The governor will provide opening remarks, and we may have some other folks like Becca Ballant come and talk about the importance of early childhood for the field. So really big week across the board, the week of January 11th for early childhood, given the number of kind of announcements and things coming out. So Danielle, I'm seeing your note about how to access that meeting. Beth and I